Matt, what do you know about this guy, Ahmari?
Oh, this is the guy that blocked me, but we had him on Left Reckoning a couple weeks ago. He's like the one. There's not a whole lot of conservatives that are like, oh yeah, our entire stuff about focusing on or not supporting like workers and stuff like that. That's a huge problem. And so he's got a new book out called, which is about how private power is controlling too much of our lives, and he's making the rounds on.
How does he?
He's basically. I mean, it's kind of.
I know that's like Rayham Salam and Ross Douthat had that sort of like moment where they were like talking about worker empowerment,
right?
Whatever it was 15 years ago, and that went nowhere. Is he doing that same thing?
Sort of a.
Why did he block you?
I called him a dumbass for something.
What is private?
On the
what
show?
is private
on
power?
Twitter. But
After the show?
No, before the show, years ago, like in 2018.
Oh, and did he forget? Or
I never talked to him about it because I wasn't there for the interview. But
okay.
He deleted the tweet that I called him a dumbass for, so I think he might have agreed that it was a bad tweet, whatever it was. But he converted to like Catholicism, so he's got like a weird, like a socially conservative reasons for wanting the private industry to have less control over our lives. It's not something I find too interesting. I just find him as a sort of lone voice doing because what's interesting to me is he's sort of like the opposite of the MAGA conservatives, which say like, in order to do this this economic stuff, we need to accept all of their social stuff. And he's saying in order for us to do what we want socially, we need to accept the left's econ stuff, which is, I think why maybe Glenn Beck.
I mean, it's not actionable whatsoever with the Republican Party, but this is his thing.
It's ideas, man.
Okay.
He just got written up in the Times like last week. But here is Glenn Beck responding apparently to some of this.
Listen to this. Americans who devote decades of their lives to toil should be able to retire in dignity and safety, period. I mean, I hate to point this out, but in the Hebrew language, there is no word for retire. Now, I believe that I don't know if
pause it. I want everybody to stop and just think, why do you think he hates to bring that up? Like what? Like this is the
Glenn's always bringing that up.
Why do you think he hates to bring it up? And like, what are we supposed to take from this? We should also say, I am sure there are languages that are spoken by fewer number of people in the world. But I would say Hebrew is probably pretty up there in terms of ones that are spoken that, by fewer people in the world. But
it's so funny because it acts as if
the
word retire meant the same thing.
Wait. Okay. I just want people to try and guess before we do any more commentary because I want to stop here so you can take a moment. Put your bets down. Go ahead.
Listen to this. Americans who devote decades of their lives to toil should be able to retire in dignity and safety, period. I mean, I hate to point this out, but in the Hebrew language, there is no word for retire. Now, I believe that, I don't know if I'm ever going to retire, but even if I did retire, it would just be to do something else. You're never stopping working, and that doesn't mean that you have to toil in the same job that you've been in. However, what he says, a stronger labor movement with government backing could demand that large firms restore the older model of retirement based on defined benefits.
Yeah, defined benefits.
Wait, the older model? You mean the one before the government took over Social Security?
No.
You mean one where you did get?
Can you pause it? I'm sorry. He's talking about defined benefit plans, right? Not 401ks, ones that are more
let me just
static. Yeah.
And really this change happened really closer to, I think it was the 80s when we started the 401k. Will you just double check that under Reagan? We had in this country, certainly in the post-war era, maybe to some extent, prior to Roosevelt, but probably not that much, what was known as a guaranteed or defined benefit pensions. In other words, I put money in and I am guaranteed to get this amount per month from my benefit, by my pension. Defined benefit. Now it is defined contributions. I put my money into my 401k. What comes out on the other end? It's a crapshoot, man. If the stock market's doing well and does well and it's up when I retire, I did okay. If it's not, I'm done.
Just the history here. In 1978, Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1978, including a provision, Section 401k, that gave employees a tax-free way to defer compensation for bonuses or stock.
Wait, hold on, though.
So
but Sam, I hate to tell you this, or I hate to say it. Did you know that there's no phrase for defined benefit plan in Latin?
I did not know that. I did not know that. But his whole talk, Social Security is not what did away with defined benefit programs. Those existed for 40 years. Legally, there was no other. It was for 40 years after Social Security, slightly more. But then really, we're still through the 80s, still the prominent until 401k got sort of like juiced under the Reagan administration. But go ahead.
Older model? You mean the one before the government took over Social Security? You mean one where...
Oh, pause it. Incidentally,
took over.
The government did not take over Social Security. The government invented Social Security.
Yes.
The takeover.
Go ahead.
The older model? You mean the one before the government took over Social Security? You mean one where you did get a golden watch? You did work at a company. Not all companies did it, but you could pay in some of your salary and you could retire and the company would help you with the retirement. That model was destroyed by the federal government, creating yet another agency. And what did they do with our money? They don't have our money. Every dollar that I have paid into Social Security my whole life, I'm not going to see. I'm not going to see it.
Pause it. That is an unequivocal lie.
Yep.
He will, in fact, see every dollar that he put into Social Security and a tiny bit more.
And the party that he supports is the one that would cut into any of those dollar figures for future generations.
Let me make this clear. He's going to see everything he put in there and a tiny bit more if he lives to like 100. I don't know how old he is, but he's not much older than me. He's probably like 60. He's going to be fine.
You guys are similar ages?
I think so, right?
Well, yeah.
He's 59.
That's shocking.
What?
Sam, that's a victory lap for you. I mean, you look like you're from two different generations.
I'm just stuck on the...
we would have been in high school together.
Oh my God.
He really looks so much older.
He looks horrible.
Well, he's lit.
His soul is rotting from the inside.
He was around when everybody just spoke Hebrew.
I'm stuck on this. So, apparently the word paresh means leave, also retire. But I'm also looking in the Bible, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, this applies to the Levites, from 25 years old and upward, they shall come to do duty in the service of the tent of meeting. And from the age of 50 years, they shall withdraw from the duty of the service and serve no more. I mean, conceptually, I don't know how that
translates to retirement, yeah.
But that sounds a lot like retirement to me.
Matt doesn't always like to bring that up.
I hate to bring up the Old Testament.
It is amazing that, I don't know why he's also, there were no companies at that, when Hebrew was first spoken.
Retirement meant I'm done serving a capital
for the night.
Yeah.
For the night.
Because when people were old back then, it was kind of like the community would support them generally.
Of course.
It's not like you're alienated from society and maybe just left on your own to starve in an apartment.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
And what did they do with our money? They don't have our money. Every dollar that I have paid into Social Security my whole life, I'm not going to see. I'm not going to see it. They don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I some of this goes to the idea that the concept of a person going through their life, working really hard at a job that is trying to produce for their family, and at the end of that life, they're able to, let's call it retirement for the sake of this, but like, what is retirement? I mean, as you point out, retirement might be working at your church. It might be, it doesn't mean you just sit around at a golf course necessarily, right? Like, it's something that you want to do, finding that thing that you want to do. And that is something that I think we all aspire to.
We do.
When I look at the economy, I think...
you need to materially support them in that. Volunteering at your church doesn't pay for the bills.
Right. I mean, the whole point is retirement in this means, how do I, having to stop working to survive, as opposed to work for my own interest and pursuits.
Yes.
Now, I don't know why, I think, I'm not sure, but I don't know if there's a word for church in Hebrew either, for that matter. Go ahead.
It might be, it doesn't mean you just sit around at a golf course necessarily, right? Like, it's something that you want to do, finding that thing that you want to do. And that is something that I think we all aspire to.
We do.
When I look at the economy, I think to myself, man, if I could just have the money that the government has taken from me over these years, I could do that on my own. I wouldn't need government programs, but instead they take them from me. They give me a promise of a future IOU with money that I know they don't have.
They do have it. That's the thing, is that it creates security. That's the whole concept of social security.
It's so fundamental.
Yes, because, I mean, that is why they have a social program, because, I mean, their whole premise here is based on a lie that they will not see their social security. But you will. So it is you will receive checks in order to achieve the ends that you're describing. And government did that.
Their best argument is that if we do nothing, and it changes depending on what revenues are year to year, but sometime around 2033, the extra trust fund is going to be depleted, and we will rely only on people paying into the system to pay out, which is the way the system is designed, incidentally. But we should also say that, like, and that will only happen if the government decides not to fund Social Security more with taxes. I will also say that, Social Security cannot add to the deficit or debt, so they will have to have taxes raised to pay for it. The other bad news along that is that every single other thing that we expect from the government also is not funded past 2033. It needs to be funded every year. That's why there's a government shutdown. So we are relying on the politicians to do the exact same thing in 2033 or 2032 or 2031, 2029, whatever it is, that they do every year, which is to pass a budget and work out how they're going to fund stuff. That happens every year. So the idea that that money's not going to be there has been a canard. When George W. Bush went into the Treasury Department and just said, like, this is where the money is. It's all gone. It's just an IOU, just a piece of paper. Like every other thing that has value in our society, it's a piece of paper.
He was expecting a Scrooge McDuck jumping into coin situation.
Exactly. I thought I went down here to Treasury. I thought I'd just have to squeeze my way through dollar bills.
He hasn't understood the concept of object permanence yet.
Exactly. But if you look up 401k experiment, or the words failed 401k experiment, or percentage of workers who have had to dip into their 401k, you will see that this 401k program, which was, I think, started as some type of SOP to the right, and then really blew up, as a sort of like a test case, blew up during Reagan, has been an abject failure. It has been an abject failure. It has allowed these companies, incidentally, too, to sort of even when they hit their pension numbers, it allows them, some are guaranteed under the pension guarantee fund, But even then, sometimes if they go bankrupt, people can get screwed. I think it was United Airlines pilots got screwed by this. It allows them, because it's not a defined benefit program, but rather a defined contribution program, to simply underfund pensions at times and just sort of overestimate what the returns are going to be on the stock market. And we've had a lot of returns on the stock market over the past 10 years. But I can tell you, speaking to someone who has been conscious of, things for longer than 10 years, that it's not necessarily going to last. So let's see.
I'm trying to look up if Mormons have a word for relapse.
Apropos of nothing?
Just wondering.
All right. One more quick call.